just like make her suffer a bit before she's redeemed. And there's like a 90% chance of you coming out dead. Boy has finally graduated from school and gone into college. Maybe next time he'll get to hold a job. Welcome. Last week gave us three dramas about revenge. Eve, Dr. Lawyer, and Why Her. Between Soeji's seductive long game, So Yoonjin's ruthless magnetism, and Soji Sub's surprisingly earnest performance, revenge mellow lovers are a bit spoiled for choice. Now, I have loved the works of all three actors, but I'm not usually a fan of this genre. So I decided to taste test all three dramas, and I'm going to give you my first impressions on this video, and hopefully it'll help you decide on what you should be watching next. Now, the rules of the game. Number one, I'm only watching one episode of each of these dramas. I may bend the rule a bit, but mostly this is to preserve my own time and also not to force myself to commit to more than I can chew. And number two, I'm going to limit my speculations to what I get out of the first episode, more or less, and not really go into anything that's being talked about online, just to create a kind of time capsule of my impressions just of the initial episode. We begin with Eve, which started airing on June 1st. This is Soeji's comeback vehicle, even though she wasn't gone for that long. We loved her in It's Okay to Not Be Okay. And I think the people around her figured out that the audience really wanted her in a similar character again, but not too similar. Like, we want her to be intelligent, self-possessed, very confident, aware of her own beauty, and be able to weaponize it when necessary. All of that, but not exactly the same character as It's Okay. And I think Eve totally delivers on that. Now, I'll level with you here. I was way more excited about Soeji on my screen than the rest of the story playing out around her. Soeji is undoubtedly the best, most memorable part of the first episode, and I have a feeling that this is going to stay true throughout the show. Now, full credit to the drama. They do one thing different from the usual long game revenge mellow that hooked my interest. Usually, you have a character who wants revenge against a person, a family, a corporate entity, donning a whole new persona, completely different from their actual life, entering the social space where they want to take revenge, and then making everything implode from within. And that's always interesting. I love that. But what Soeji's character, Irail, is doing over here is she isn't donning a persona. She has wanted revenge against this family since she was 16. And she's been plotting that revenge pretty much since that age. So her life isn't a secondary identity that she's putting on and can later take off. Her life is that identity. Like, she takes major decisions, like who she's going to marry and where they're going to settle, all of that stuff, with the end goal of destroying this family in mind, which is a level of commitment you just have to admire. Something else I was really impressed by was simply the brilliance of casting Soeji in this role. I've gone into the story knowing that Soeji's character is out to seduce the son-in-law of this big conglomerate, and she is going to be basically playing a femme fatale. What I was not expecting was that her seduction pretty much starts from the moment she comes on screen. And it's played out really nicely. Park Yoon-byun, who plays this son-in-law stuck in an unhappy marriage, doesn't make him a victim of this family. He seems to be reaping the benefits of being part of this evil corporation just as much as any executive in such a corporation. So he's not this blameless, hapless husband, but the show still manages to make you feel a little bad for him simply because his wife and his in-laws are clearly utterly insane. His father-in-law especially is shown to be the kind of evil who has his enemies killed by making his dogs bite them. By the way, K-dramas, let's take a moment here. There are other ways of showing that an evil corporation is evil without having its chairman literally feed his enemies to the dogs. I see something like this and it just screams over the top in my head. My interest tanks majorly when I see scenes like this now. It was fine in the 80s and in the 90s, but move on now, dramas. You're capable of showing institutional corruption in more nuanced ways. Now, finally, the thing that I was least impressed by was basically everybody except Soeji. I do have some fondness for Park Byung-yoon, whom I had really liked in Because This Is My First Life, but he basically spends most of the first episode either being very bored or very turned on by Soeji. And I needed his character to do a little more for him to be interesting. And the rest of the cast is, as I said, pretty much standard evil corporation chairman, evil corporation chairman's daughter, who's also evil. And then I suppose you also have Lee Sung-yeop. I'm not entirely sure what his job description is. Used to be a human rights attorney, had helped Israel in the past, and is now an author and working possibly for the government. He's either going to become somebody who ends up helping Israel or unknowingly creates obstacles for her. He may also become her eventual love interest, because the guy Israel is currently married to doesn't have enough of a presence for me to believe that he's going to be an actual meaningful character going forward. I do have a couple of things that I'm interested in finding out. What's going on in Israel's mind? Like, does she have affection towards her husband? Does she see him as a tool? What does she feel about her own daughter? Because her external behavior towards her child is very sweet. But given that she is plotting her every move and she's been doing it for years, it'd be interesting to find out what's going on inside her head when she looks at her own family. And how does that aspect pan out by the end of this revenge? That's a question I have. I don't know if I want to commit to 15 more episodes to find out the answers, though. Okay, and next up is Dr. Lawyer. That started airing on June 2nd. Now, initially, when I saw the posters, the teaser, I felt a sense of deja vu. Does anybody remember that medical drama that Jang Hyuk did a few years back, A Beautiful Mind, where Jang Hyuk was this neurodivergent, misunderstood genius? It was a really painful drama to sit through. And for some reason, that's the vibe I got out of this. But of course, I mean, it's not like that. It's nothing like that. I'm probably prejudicing you for no good reason by making that comparison. But the reason I bring it up is because it felt like I had read this synopsis before. And I'm not entirely wrong in that. Dr. Lawyer does have that same traditional medical drama plot of like corporate corruption, rich people getting easier access to things, often by cheating the rights of normal people who are standing in the queue. And then you have our doctor in the middle of it, who is, of course, genius, the most talented, the most admired and envied of all doctors ever. And he's doing like 9 surgeries in a day and still being taken advantage of by the corporate overlords who just want to exploit his skills and not give him the credit that he deserves. If you can hear my skepticism, it's because, as true as it is that who you're related to or friends with often matters more in meritocracies across the world, it's highly unlikely that a guy as talented as the Dr. Soji Saab plays would be exploited in the way the drama shows that he's being exploited. So the initial premise itself just makes you very, very skeptical. There's also a lot of over-the-top things that happen right off the bat, like that moment where the genius doctor walks in and just, I have a strong premonition that Soji Saab is going to cut his throat. Yes! What did I tell you? You could see it a mile off, but you also knew that it was an essential rite of passage to establish that the genius doctor is indeed a genius, even though he doesn't have his medical license anymore. So yes, my skepticism radar was like way high. But the reason I not only finished the first episode, but went on to watch the second episode, yes, that's against the rules, but the first episode left you on a cliffhanger and it was right in the middle of a flashback. So I had to, I was tricked into it. And the second episode did give me a little more in terms of character exploration than the first episode did. So I'm kind of glad I saw it. Soji Saab is probably the one who's really pulling the drama forward at this point. He is, as I said in the beginning of the video, surprisingly earnest in his performance. He makes you believe that he is this genius doctor, yes, but he's also this law-abiding, honest guy who's willing to work really hard and take on way more than what his share of work should be, just so he can prove himself, and then gets taken advantage of because of the politics happening between the heads of the hospital. Ends up being accused of something he didn't do and loses his license. And then 5 years later comes back as a lawyer, taking on medical malpractice cases. And you can see the shift from the earnest version before to a harder, more cynical version later on. And that shift is substantially portrayed in the way Soji Sub carries himself. I've really liked him in Master's Son before. He's always been a very talented actor, but it's always nice to see when actors effectively flex their experience in performance and properly show you a change in a character that's happening in just 2 episodes. So yeah, Soji Sab himself was really interesting. One other aspect that excited me a little about this drama was the presence of Im Soo-hyung. I like this girl a lot. I've loved her in Gangnam Beauty and Graceful Family. I'm starting Uri the Virgin now, but I've personally never seen her do a character where she is the love interest, the foil to the main protagonist, and this is through and through a Soji Sab drama, so it's an interesting dynamic. They used to be lovers, they had a falling out because of a horrible thing that happened, and now are they going to end up being partners? Are they going to oppose each other? It's again, an interesting dynamic, mostly because of the actors involved. And can I just say, the music every time a surgery is happening gave me so much anxiety. I had forgotten that this was one of the reasons I loved Hospital Playlist, because they made me believe that doctors knew what they were doing in a surgery. Every other medical drama makes you feel like surgeons just walk into the operation theater and are completely unprepared to deal with anything that happens inside there. And there's like a 90% chance of you coming out dead. Whereas Hospital Playlist made it seem so mundane, so regular. Doctors doing so many surgeries on a daily basis that they are prepared for pretty much everything, that they can accurately predict when something is an actually risky surgery and when something is just simple. You know what? If you're a melodrama freak, this drama might just be for you. I don't know if I can take this level of anxiety for too long. Oh, one more note. I was really looking forward to seeing Shin Sang-rok in this drama, but he hasn't yet made an appearance. I did watch the preview at the end of episode 2, and he seems to have a really interesting character. I might come back in the next week just to get an idea of what he contributes to the plot, because if he is interesting, I might actually stick around, because Soji Sub, he does make a good argument just by being present in the drama. But if Shin Sang-rok is added to that mix, I might just be convinced to stick around. Finally, let's talk about Why Her, which started airing on June the 3rd. And the other 2 dramas had star actors helming the production. This one, though, not only has So Hyun Jin, it also has Hwang In-yeop. And who hasn't been waiting for Hwang In-yeop to get his male lead role? It's not quite what I thought he would do, but as somebody on Twitter pointed out recently, boy has finally graduated from school and gone into college. Maybe next time he'll get to hold a job. Why Her also has Baek In-hyuk, whom you guys may remember from My Roommate is a Kumiho. He was the rich second lead, or from In the Distance, The Spring is Green, where he was this sad college student. That's super cute. This man is definitely going to end up being a main lead pretty soon. But getting third billing after Hwang In-yeop is not the worst you can do in your second year of being very visible to the public. Did I say Bae In-hyuk or Baek In-hyuk? Because his name is Bae In-hyuk. Now, to be completely honest, of the 3 dramas that I'm talking about today, Why Her is the one that I've been the most excited about in anticipation and even after finishing the first episode. Just like the previous 2 dramas, I can pretty much tell what the beats of this story is going to be. Despite that, I am eager to see it unfold. And a huge part of the credit for that, of course, goes to So Hyun Jin. Here's the thing, after watching these dramas, I feel about So Hyun Jin's character what I expected to feel about So Ye-ji's character. That pull that you get from the protagonist, whose journey you really want to follow. If I had to describe the protagonists of these 2 dramas, I would say So Ye-ji is like broken glass covered in satin. And So Hyun Jin is like satin studded with broken glass. And inexplicably, it's the second that I find very attractive right now. So Hyun Jin's character is this well-known attorney in this really big legal firm, and she's representing huge corporate entities and politicians. And a large part of her job seems to just be suppressing any and all accusations that come up from the normal citizenry. And she does this by manipulative techniques created to sometimes find real flaws in the accusations and sometimes just to exploits existing vulnerabilities to coerce people into coming to a compromise when they had actually wanted justice. So basically, she's a really unlikable character right off the bat. And the drama really doubles down on emphasizing how awful she is, not just because she is preserving corporate interest at the expense of sometimes real victims, but because of how little sympathy she has for the people whom she's decimating. The story definitely wants us to view her as competent but not entirely sympathetic, and in a way that makes the story more fun. Because here are the beats of the story. She's on her way to the top of this law firm, except she makes a mistake, and everybody who hates her in her workplace, and that's pretty much everybody, because she trampled a lot of egos on her way up, they band together and basically pull her down. And the fact is that maybe she wouldn't have been pulled down, but she got just a tad bit too arrogant too early, and her boss saw how arrogant she was and didn't quite like it and kind of helped push her off the cliff. And so she lands up at this adjunct professor job at her alma mater and decides to take on the directorship of this legal clinic. And I've actually no doubt that Kwon Hyuk and Bae Hyuk, both of them law students, are also going to end up working for that legal clinic. And our cast of law professors and law students are going to end up taking cases where eventually, So Hyun-jin's opposition is going to be her own law firm. And then she is going to have to defend the people whom she usually used to oppress. And that's where all the fun comes from. I am looking forward to this, much like I was excited at the beginning of law school, which didn't turn out to be anything like I expected. I'm excited to see what they do with the storyline. I'm always happy to have a protagonist that I am not wholly sympathetic to yet, because that allows her redemption arc to be that much more satisfying. Of course, there is a careful line between having your protagonist be unsympathetic and having them be out and out evil. To my mind, So Hyun-jin's character isn't out and out evil. She feels guilt, she feels crushed by self-doubt. In her own way, she gives good advice even when she's being utterly ruthless, but she is also a person who survived an extremely toxic environment by becoming an extremely toxic person. So for this person to redeem herself would be to show that it's possible for you to emerge from an extremely horrible work environment where you felt like you had to become the worst monster to lead the pack of monsters, and get to a place where you feel like you can live your own life and be successful without having to be part of that hellhole. It's just personally very satisfying for me if they can take the story there. Now, briefly, there are two scenes that are probably going to end up stopping people from continuing with this drama. The first one is a scene where So Hyun-jin's character is basically telling an alleged rape victim that she should just give up the case right now, because if she pursues it, then Osuje, which is So Hyun-jin's character, Osuje's legal team is basically going to pursue every hole in her story, everything that doesn't seem quite certain, and then bring up her character, her background, and make the thing very public so that her family gets to know about it. She basically lays out exactly what her legal team is going to do to decimate her case, to the point where the woman is angry and crying and crushed, and it's really, really horrible. Even Osuje's assistant is very uncomfortable with the scene. It is a hard scene to watch, but I appreciate the way they did it. A, because it establishes how low Osuje is willing to go at this point to gain the position that she wants. And B, because there's more going on under the scene. The man she's defending right at that point was somebody she was dating, and she basically broke up with him because this accusation came up. That makes you think she most likely believes the woman, but she still goes out and defends him because he is a client of her firm, and that is how much of a sellout Osuje is at this point. So in terms of establishing her character, this scene was very effective. The second scene is one where her boss, the one who pushes her off the cliff, metaphorically, basically gives her the news that, hey, you're just gonna be on a long vacation for now. So Osuje basically just felt her entire world collapse, and she couldn't direct her anger at her boss. Instead, she lashes out at basically a bystander, which is Hwang In-yeop, who had accidentally spilled this bucket of fish near her feet and slaps him several times. And it's clear that she's not focused at him at all. She's just lashing out because that is how messed up she is. She has been somebody who has been looking down on anyone weaker socially or economically, or just in terms of the hierarchy within the legal system. So her lashing out at this serving guy at this restaurant they're sitting at is just very consistent with this horrible character that she is. If the story can please give us a satisfying redemptive arc, just like make her suffer a bit before she's redeemed. If the show can just do that, I think I would really like this show in that case. Oh, one last thing. I was a little concerned about the student-teacher dynamic between Hwang In-yeop and Seo Hyun-jin, and I'm not entirely cleared up on that situation as yet. Right now, so much of the story is so focused on Oh Soo-jae's corrupt, toxic character that I can't even begin to imagine a situation where Hwang In-yeop's clear one-sided devotion is ever going to be reciprocated. The two of them haven't really had much interaction as yet, so I really can't make up my mind about where they want that side of the story to go. But it would be really interesting to see Hwang In-yeop's ideal view of her from years ago when she had helped him clash with what she is at present and what happens after that. So, as might have become very apparent, it's why her that I am definitely going to continue watching, and I'll see how I feel about the other two dramas in the coming weeks. Okay, so I hope this video was helpful. I tried not to make it too spoilery, though I may have gotten a little bit carried away with why her because I was that excited. And hopefully, I'll see you soon with another video. Bye.